Do you think sales is a bad word? When you hear the word sales, I wonder what images come to mind. Whatever your relationship is with selling, I'm glad you're here. Let's have a conversation about how to sell like a good human. Hi, welcome to Conversations with Good Humans. I'm your host, Catherine Brown, and I'm author of the book called How Good Humans Sell. Today on Conversations with Good Humans, I'm talking with Colleen Stanley, sales trainer and author of the great book called Emotional Intelligence for Sales Success. Colleen's sales training is unique because she focuses specifically on building EQ in salespeople. I love the book, and it was actually one of my first guides on the role that EQ plays in sales. I read it several years ago, and I was so delighted that we were introduced not long ago by a mutual friend. I invited her to the podcast, and she said yes. Recording the conversation was really fun, and the time flew by. In addition to speaking about emotional intelligence, you'll hear Colleen talk about work-life balance. Her opinion might surprise you, and she even has a gift. It's a really nice gift for all of my listeners, so don't miss that toward the end of the episode. You can also check the show notes. Here's Colleen Stanley. Colleen, I read Emotional Intelligence for Sales Success probably 6-7 years ago now. And I had read a little bit about emotional intelligence prior to that, but I devoured the book because you took these concepts, you applied them to the selling situation. And I was joking before the call that I'm so honored to have you on the call because it's a little bit like having sales royalty. If you study the soft skill side of selling and you don't think of training as just the way you write templates, scripts, things like that, you really do have just such a lovely, long-standing reputation. And it's an honor to have you here and to be talking about this topic today. So thank you.
Well, thank you. And I guess I can go by Princess Colleen now or something like that.
Thank you so much. I really am excited to share what we'll be talking about with our listeners today, because I think when people talk about emotional intelligence in selling, I think people equate it to empathy. I think that they have some idea what the topic means, but I don't think it's nearly as expansive as it could be. So I'm really looking forward to unpacking that. Let's start out and talk first about how you first became aware of the concept, just in general, of emotional intelligence. How did you come across that and get the idea to apply that to our domain?
Well, I would have to say I cognitively became aware of it when a very good friend of mine, Marty Lassen, and her business partner, Scott Helford, introduced me to the concept. They'd been teaching emotional intelligence in the leadership world for many, many years, right? And so they sat down with me and they said, you absolutely need to incorporate this into your sales training, sales leadership training processes. Now, at that time, Catherine, literally, I don't even think I'd heard the word emotional intelligence. And I certainly had not heard it in the same sentence as sales, right? Because we're supposed to be hard charging, take no prisoners, never take no for an answer. So to answer your question, when I started backing up, once I recognized what emotional intelligence was, I recognized that some of the best mentors I had in my life had a lot of emotional intelligence, high IQ people, but really emotionally intelligent people. So that's where, once I got introduced to it, I started looking at my history, realizing how fortunate I had been to be surrounded by people that possess this skill.
So why do you think that it is not mainstream yet? It's my opinion, it's not mainstream to have this conversation throughout B2B sales organizations everywhere. I feel like this is a concept in the leadership development space. We're going on, would you say 20, 30 years that the research has been out and they've been publishing and it's been very prominent. And I know you do the work in this space and you hear about it a little bit, but almost none of my clients ask me, will you be covering this as part of training? Will you talk about this as at a conference? Why is that? Why do people think of sales training as so tactical still and not addressing these human issues?
Well, part of it is I don't think people have really realized the importance of developing the whole person as it relates to getting higher performance, higher productivity, and frankly, happier people. Happier people stay at your companies as it increases retention rates and all those wonderful things. One of the areas that I think sales managers find difficult if they don't receive some formal education and training around this is how do you take something that seems intangible and make it tangible? So, for example, how do you teach someone to be assertive? So you can talk about assertiveness, the defaults if you're not assertive, but then how do you actually coach someone to be assertive? So I think that's been the disconnect. They can buy into it, but they absolutely don't know how to teach it. And part of that is lack of formal training around this topic.
And so this is where even if someone says they want to have a coaching culture, that might be a buzzword that people are using, but in actual practice, we don't know how to ask those questions or what it looks like to help someone design a map of where they're trying to go if we are advising them. Right?
Exactly. So to play on your point, you've got a sales manager that they are doing the consistent coaching cadence, and good for him or her. However, the coaching is around the tactical skills. They actually miss basic skills such as, how did your lack of emotional self-awareness play into the outcome of this sales meeting? How did your self-limiting beliefs impact the actions you took or did not take? So they don't even know how to frame up the coaching questions that develop the soft skills. So often it's around the tactics, which as you and I know are important. However, it is the soft skills that help you with the consistent execution of the right selling behaviors.
And to learn how to self-reflect, to learn to deconstruct something, whether you win or lose, and get to a place where you can self-assess. What was I believing when I was doing that? What was I thinking? What might have been in my own way? I feel like I've trained myself to do that more, but it's because I am surrounded with, I have personal friendships who are executive coaches. It's their language, hearing them use what questions and how questions and the framing of things that I have imported in my own life. It's not because I was trained to sell that way. So I just think it's so wonderful that you can help people learn how to help others practice as opposed to having this be simply a good theory.
And that's where it kind of lays. It's in the theory world. And if you can't apply it, it's maybe not even due to lack of awareness or belief system or buy-in. They simply don't know how to teach and coach it. And you just mentioned something very important, Catherine, is the self-reflection. So this is not a new concept. For heaven's sakes, how much more do we need to talk about mindfulness and meditation and the positive outcomes from it? But I do believe this is where you have to examine your belief systems, because if you believe carving out quiet time each and every day, preferably in the morning, will improve your day, will improve your professional outlook, your personal outlook, you will absolutely take the time. But until you change that belief system, you are not going to take the time to self-reflect. And so, as you well know, with all the training you've had, that which you're not aware of, you cannot change, and that which you're not aware of, you're bound to repeat. So we're on these just, sales treadmills going to nowhere because often we're repeating the same selling mistakes.
It's so true. So for our audience that knows some of these aspects of emotional intelligence, let's give them our categories for this. So we discussed that there are 5 areas. Maybe there's a better word than areas. So please correct me on this. I'm talking about the categories of self-perception, self-expression, interpersonal, decision-making, and stress management. The assessment I'm most familiar with is called the EQI 2.0. Those are the 5 categories that the subscales are under, where you get mapped after you take this assessment. What would we call them besides areas? What's the correct word for that?
I think you've got it. That's the same assessment we use with clients, and they're called subscales. You can call them composites, attributes, but all the language adds up to the same outcome.
Okay, great. Okay, great. So what we want our listener to understand is that all the things a person is measured in, so not just empathy. Empathy is one subscale in the 5. And under the 5. So there's several things that go into self-perception, several things that go into self-expression, several things that go into interpersonal. And so when I read the book, I read you have mapped what you think are some of the most important traits that a person can practice to grow in their emotional intelligence, to be successful in selling. And I agreed with all the ones you picked. I thought they were super interesting. I'm so bullish about beliefs that I think the things that fall under the category of self-perception are actually my favorite. I would say for most people, this is what I'm noticing with my client now. To be fair, it might be confirmation bias. Like I already think this, so I'm
Right,
looking
right.
for it and seeing it in people. But I feel like what you believe is possible for yourself, and what you believe about selling, and that internal dialogue you have in your own brain is the driver for the actions that we take or the actions we avoid. And so I'm always preaching about this in my talks. It's the essence of my keynote called How Good Humans Sell, is noticing the common stories we tell and how we get in our own way and why we don't do our follow-up. It's because we decide for other people because we are believing the story we're making up. So I would like to make the case that the things under self-perception are the most impactful, but that's a pretty grand sweeping statement. So I want to give you a chance to respond to that.
Well, actually, when we're working with clients that desire to build a more emotionally intelligent sales organization, we start with that composite, and the key skill being emotional self-awareness. Because just like I said earlier, that what you're not aware of, you cannot change. And underneath self-awareness and understanding why you do things, not do things, at this point, we live in the knowledge age. So we've got more information to be good people, smart people, wise people, skinny people. So it's no longer lack of knowledge. It's understanding why we're not doing the behaviors that we know will produce better happiness and outcomes here. So that often under self-awareness, examining your self-limiting belief systems, because what you believe will direct the actions you take or don't take. It will direct the skills you learn, apply, and study. And so let's take, for example, our current environment. We've got record high inflation, gas prices, looming recession, the list goes on. And what I'm talking to a lot of my sales teams about and sales leaders about is that actually your belief system could be, this is a terrible time to sell. Nobody's going to switch vendors. The only way they're going to buy is on price. My belief, and it's based on going through 4 financial downturns. So listeners, I'm 100 years old, pay attention. So my experience, but it's also been based on my belief system, is that this can be the best time to sell, because in good times, companies are flush with cash. In good times, companies are almost getting a little arrogant. They're starting to believe their own press because of their success. So why should I consider other vendors, other ideas, recommendations? In tough times, there is no one that's the smartest person in the room. Therefore, the smart companies will be open to new conversations, and this can be the best time to be prospecting. That's my belief system, which has led to me taking the actions not to be fearful during these times, because I believe people are more open, smart organizations, and I work with smart organizations, as you do.
Love that. You're making me think about so I had a program that I was offering that was the 12 module sales training system that I developed. The first half's on belief, second half is on what you and I might think of as the how-tos of the sales tactics. And nobody was signing up for my class in May of 2020, as you might imagine.
Oh, wasn't that a fun time? Yes.
Right. So it was, but I think of that adage that says necessity was the mother of invention. And what happened is I started signing up for every personal development, inexpensive or free seminar from people I respected that I could possibly find, because I have a small staff, but I have employees that count on me, and I did not want to tell them I could not pay them, and I did not want to make a change, and I had to figure something out. And so, but bringing this up, this context, I also want to share that it was an investment in my own personal development to increase my belief that I was after, because I thought, I know I have a creative mechanism. That's what integrity selling calls it, your creative mechanism. I know I have a creative mechanism. I know that I have in me the ability to invent and to be flexible and to have us evolve the way we need to respond for such a time as this, because people needed more help selling virtually, not less. It was a matter of just figuring out the right offer. But I was doing everything I could to work on me and my personal habits because I wanted to get to where I believed people like us do things like this. Like I wanted to get to where
Right.
it was
Mhm.
just so second nature for me to truly believe I can figure this out. My team and I are smart people. We can figure this out.
Right.
And it was so interesting to watch that all you need, this gets to stress management, right? But all you need is a little bit of duress and you start to see what people are really made of. And I'm not saying that in a self-congratulatory way. I'm confessing I worked really diligently. I mean, it was not natural for me to stay super calm, not let the cortisol run through my body, and to invent and create calmly. I had to be very deliberate about that. But I just watch people throw up their hands and even have sales calls with me where they would say, if they were a big enough company, they would say, my guys aren't great selling virtually, and we're just used to being in front of people. And basically, we have enough distributors and what we sell that we're probably just going to write it out. I literally had a CEO tell me that. And I thought, how did I even get on this call? I should have pre-qualified it better. It's a waste of my time because they weren't trying to grow and change through that experience.
Right.
And it ties all the way back to both stress management and beliefs under self-perception, right?
Right. Well, if I had to unpack what you just shared, so number one, you had high self-awareness that you had a stuck point, right? Because again, that what you're not aware of, you cannot change. However, you also had enough under this same composite of self-regard. And self-regard is the ability to admit your strengths and weaknesses. And so you're sitting there going, you know what? I'm confident, but I got a blind spot here. I need some help getting over this blind spot. So then you applied, because of your awareness, a competency of stress tolerance. And people that manage stress well are resilient, they're gritty, they take charge, they take control, they take action. So if I had to unpack your story, I am seeing three EQ skills at play here. Self-awareness, I got a blind spot, I'm not going to beat myself up, but I'm going to take action. And that's what allowed you to continue to be highly successful and where you are today.
Thank you. Thank you for that. I think that's true. It wasn't executed perfectly, but I think that that's true. And what I
Now
learned
let's talk
also,
about perfection. Perfection is overrated, progress is not. And so what you did was probably just kept progressing towards
right.
perfection.
That's right. And I learned a lot about myself in the category of decision making, because what I learned is that I want input. I want input to come to me. And then I need to make a decision. I need to ride that course for a while and give it time, because I can be easily distracted. I can wait to try to get too much input. And it's like, you know what? You're the leader. You make a decision. Like, make a decision and go with it. People will follow you if you show them where we're going. And it's back to that storytelling metaphor we were talking before we started recording about the hero and the guide, and this idea that the salesperson is a guide. And I'm a guide internally to the people inside my company. I'm a guide to clients when I sell. And so sometimes we definitely don't want to let the perfect be enemy of the good, right? Where it's like, we're going to just keep going and evolve and figure this out.
Well, and I think to your point with decision making, that is a composite with a subscales underneath it, problem solving, impulse control. Again, it was your awareness. And you had the awareness that, gosh, sometimes during tough times, shiny object syndrome can take over. Well, let's try this idea. Let's try this idea.
Yes.
And, there are times to gather data, and then there are times just to move. And if you didn't make the right decision, learn the lesson, and make the course correction, move forward. So again, that's what I'm hearing with your story there. You gathered the data, but you became aware of where you could have analysis paralysis, or you could have shiny object syndrome. And both do not end well, by the way. So again, but that goes back to that first composite of self-perception. Know thyself. But if you don't carve out the time for reflection, I don't know how to tell any of your listeners, there's just no shortcut to improving self-awareness other than carving out the time.
So what does that look like? Not people like you and me that say yes to the things we want to say yes to and no to the things that we want to say no to, right? Like, if people who are entrepreneurs who create their own schedule, in my opinion, have no excuse, because that's either about awareness or they're just not ready to commit. for whatever it is, right? But if I don't make time for revenue generating activities, it's nobody's fault but mine. If I say yes to too many podcasts, it's nobody's fault but mine. I have to take
Right.
responsibility.
Mhm.
An employee who has a quota, or they literally are in a culture that says you have to make X calls a day, what would you say to them? And hopefully you have a chance to coach their manager, but what if you don't? What would you say to them?
Well, with the BDR or any role account executives, the number one tool that will allow you to get the activity done, and maybe it's being dictated by the company. Okay, let's say it's being dictated. What activity you can do is calendar blocking. And now, if you take a look at calendar blocking, it's been around since the beginning of time. Stephen Covey is really the one gets a lot of credit for this. You've got lots of other productivity experts. I am still amazed at how many salespeople do not calendar block their calendar. I mean, I think they wake up and they just go to work. I calendar block my entire week. It takes about 45 minutes to 60 minutes to do that. That's called delayed gratification. That's controlling the impulse to just jump in. So it's the difference between delayed gratification and instant. Now, if you needed to report to your manager, what you would have to do is slow down to speed up. And you start really analyzing your business. Hey, I made 10 outreaches that were quality versus 25 that were crap. And you show the manager, I made 10, they were quality because I customized my value proposition to the message, to the persona, all those fancy words we use in tactical training. And look what my outcome was. Well, the manager is not going to care if you got the same or better results from 10 versus 25 activities. But we don't know how to sell up to the manager because we're not slowing down and analyzing our business. It's called slow down to speed up. Have the awareness, again, where instant gratification is getting in the way of delayed gratification.
Yeah. Yes. And do you think that is more about a person not doing it because they literally have not had the time block modeled? So they just really don't know. So it's not like they're making an intelligent choice. Or do you think that comes back to deservingness and belief too, that somehow they don't believe that they enjoyed it, they deserve to experience that much success? And if I would actually get my act together and get that organized, I would have a new height in the quota that I exceed in the money I make.
I do believe this is an activity you must do it before you can change your belief system. Now, I'm one of these people that, frankly, I'm a pretty good student. So if I see somebody else being successful and they tell me to do this, I do it. Okay.
Me too.
There are some individuals.
I don't want to reinvent the wheel. That's crazy.
You know what? But there are some individuals that literally what you have to coach them on is do this activity and it will change their belief, because their belief right now is I don't have time. I've got to be busy, not productive. They see their emails filling up. So they do the multitasking, which again, we all know multitasking doesn't work. So a lot of this is examining what makes me believe that taking 45 minutes of calendar blocking and then honoring the calendar is not going to produce the outcomes I want. And so it's a little bit of both is, change the belief system or do the activity to change the belief system.
This is reminding me, I have different big time motivational speakers, people that are paid 100K, 200K. I don't even know what the upper limit is of, big conference, 50,000 person conference. I like to follow those folks and listen to how they interview on podcasts and what they say. And one recent example of this where I thought, let's not reinvent the wheel. This gentleman was talking about how he actually always takes the time to fly in the day before to see the room, and then has a whole pre-talk ritual that he goes through where he visualizes being there, and it has an extensive visualization practice. And I'll tell you, Colleen, I just, years ago would have thought that was just too woo-woo, too silly. I've had success with doing visualization. So now I watch someone like that and I think, well, I'm not being paid $100,000 to give a keynote. And they are, and I need to learn from this, right? Like, would you rather be right or would you rather get better? Right. And I use right in air quotes for our listeners, right? But like, you can be right about that for yourself, but you're not going to grow and change. And so, yeah, I think that's so interesting. So what else would we say? What else would you say about, I guess this will be to our sales managers who are listening. What else about teachability? What are other EQ traits that we're looking for, with that teachability, and how can we use this in finding the right people? Because sometimes someone new comes in the company and they've got a group of people that actually are not that flexible or that open or that teachable. So what does EQ have to do with that?
Well, that's where, again, under the same composite of self-perception, I coach a lot of my sales managers to interview and vet for a salesperson's self-regard. And again, as we slightly mentioned before, that's the ability to admit your strengths and weaknesses. Now, testing for learning is another aptitude, and we can talk about that in a minute. But here's why self-regard is so important. I think all of us have had it. The experience where you were giving feedback to a salesperson, you were doing it perfectly. You know, we like to call it the sandwich method, something positive, the area of improvement, wrap it up with something positive. Somebody that doesn't have great inner confidence and self-confidence, they tend to get defensive. They start deflecting. They become really professionals at putting it back on you. Now, this emotionally triggers a sales manager. So then they start backing off. They become passive aggressive or aggressive in their coaching. And the bottom line is no behavior changes. So with people that have high self-regard, they tend to be coachable. They're raise their hand people. They're saying, you know what, I need to own this one. I didn't do the pre-call planning. I didn't practice enough. Or frankly, as you're getting better in life and anything, you're going to take some face plants. You're going to fail. High regard people sit there and go, okay, I failed. What's the lesson learned here? And how will this lesson serve me moving forward? So they've got a belief system that failure really serves them well. So they're optimistic. Now, on the learning side, I don't think sales managers are vetting candidates enough for their aptitude and attitude towards learning. This is problematic because the world is changing. Your business in 6 months is going to be different in another 6 months. And so if you don't have somebody that wants to learn, likes to learn, I got to tell you, they're like a car. Right after you've hired them, they start depreciating because they're not growing and improving. They don't have any desire to. So that's something, again, it's a soft skill that we need to vet pretty heavily for in the interview process.
I'm struck as you're talking about this. I'm thinking about the last couple of years and how I think people thought I need video communication classes. I need to learn to sell without going face to face. And I'm not dismissing people who teach those things because they do need those things also. But there was more to it, right? What if everybody who thought I needed this tactical training, instead of learning to speak right into the Zoom like I am now, staring in the circle, right? So it looks like I'm looking at you, you look like you're looking at me, but really we're looking at the circle. Yes, that's important, but what if people had doubled down on their emotional intelligence training? What would have happened? And do you know people who did, maybe without naming names, but do you have an example of where that served them? Because that feels to me like, those traits are what would get you through, because you would have that creativity and you would be adaptable and you could evolve.
Absolutely. So it was interesting when everyone started getting, as I call it, wrapped around the axle of virtual selling, right? And I was sitting there, and I'm just one of these very pragmatic people. And remember, I'm 100 years old. And so I finally just started sharing with my clients a question, or maybe it was a statement. I said, virtual selling is not new. And they would go, what do you mean? I said, virtual selling has been around forever. If you picked up the phone and called someone and closed a piece of business over the phone, that is virtual selling. And just by sharing that story, people go, huh. And I said, good methodology works regardless of the medium. So we were teaching, some universities years ago, they were doing online sales calls before online became popular. We taught the same exact methodology to them as I did my face-to-face account executives. So what we had to do was change their belief system. Virtual selling isn't that mysterious. It's not that scary. There are some, skills you need to learn, change, and improve to be more effective. But I was not buying into that limiting belief that this is just brand new. So
I love that. No, I think that you're so right. It comes back to beliefs again, right? It comes back to beliefs again. Like, well, what if you were to shift this? What if you were actually to believe that you have already done that in a different way? So this is an iteration of something that you've already done instead of a new thing you must now go tackle on top of homeschooling your your 3 kids and everything else.
Well, and let's talk about that, because one of the things you had to shift with people is, okay, you literally only have maybe 5 or 6 hours a day because you're homeschooling. That was the reality. Now, what can you do to control that? Well, this is where you get fanatical about being productive. You get fanatical about prioritizing. You get really good at saying no to when disqualifying prospects that are never going anywhere. And literally, if you read some of Cal Newport's work, he's the author of Deep Work. He will talk about you as a human being can really only do about 4 to 5 hours of deep work every day. So instead of feeling guilty as a parent, you know what? Figure out those 4 to 5 hours and work it. But that's a belief system,
So for my audience, I promise I didn't tell Colleen, please come say belief system over and over. It's just that we really are like-minded about this, and so much does come back to this. And it reminds me, I had a pastor years ago who would say, there's nothing as practical as a good theology. And I think similarly, you think you're talking about something that's esoteric or philosophical. It's like, no, it's actually everything. It's very practical, because when you can slow down and notice that story you're telling yourself, you can catch yourself in the act and you can choose differently. But when you are on autopilot, then that stress management flies out the window and you move into avoidant or talking too much on sales calls or whatever is your habit and your go-to, because you kind of temporarily lose your mind. I'm saying that metaphorically, but you're not actually practicing the agency that you have as a human being, because you either don't know or haven't been taught.
Right. And, and this is why emotional self-awareness, under which belief systems rest, being aware of the stories. But, self-awareness is the mega skill in EQ, to be aware of when you're not being assertive, stating what you need nicely. And when you don't state what you need nicely, you end up writing practice proposals. Being aware of when you're not really engaging in delayed gratification. So you never become skillful at sales. You're always kind of average, but you never achieve unconscious competence, right? Being aware of when you're playing the victim card instead of being accountable to say, no, I need to own this one. And so it is such an important skill to continue to develop. But again, it goes back to that practice of carving out quiet time to think. And then I would also say, to your point, surround yourself by some really good individuals that truly have your back. They're the truth tellers, and they'll say, I got to tell you, Catherine, on this one, I'm going to disagree with you. I'm very lucky that I am married to a truth teller, and I think my husband Jim would say the same for me, because we will call each other on behavior, but we have enough respect for each other that we'll sit and think and go, you know what, he's right. Or there's times I'll go, no, we're going to disagree on this one, but it's okay. We're at least having the truth-telling conversations.
Yes, and this is my least favorite subscale on the EQI is reality test.
And one of my favorite
is that it's so interesting. The reason I would say it's my least favorite is because I think that it requires other people in the way that you're saying. Now, that's the way you get around it to me. And when I say get around it, I don't mean that. Let me start over. Reality testing to me is because you are self-reporting on these assessments. If you're not good at it, I don't know how you fill out the questions to show it, to show that you need work on it, because it is, to some extent, it's like capital T truth and small t truth. It's like my reality I'm experiencing is the reality I'm experiencing. And so I think people really struggle with this. And to me, it just is one of the hardest things to measure, I guess is the point I'm making. But if you take this in community with other people and you ask for people to weigh in, I think you can get closer to what is really reality. So that gets to the company and things like that.
And I think a way to improve reality testing, and let's move a little bit from just looking at sales from that very tactical point of view. This is when, if you will slow down and do an informal, if your company's not paying for formal, informal win-loss analysis, you will start seeing the reality of where you're putting opportunities into a pipeline that shouldn't have been there. Your optimism got in the way. Frankly, because you haven't been consistently prospecting, you're just kind of putting anything in the pipeline. So sometimes if you'll slow down, now that does take a person that has self-esteem that can say, you know what, I need to own this. So that's sometimes a way that you can bring reality testing, is simply looking at some of the numbers in your pipeline, but then it does take ownership to own that.
That's very practical. I like that.
Mhm.
That's very good. Before we wrap up, I want to be sure to ask and give a chance for my listeners to know, those who haven't read the book. What else would you like to say about some of the key elements that you see in star performers? What are other aspects of emotional intelligence that you see in spades?
I would say with star performers, some of that we've talked about, self-awareness, self-regard. They do possess empathy, but they possess it in the right degree, because too much empathy, you let people off the hook. You feel sorry for your prospects, your customers, you tend to discount. So we have to kind of keep that one in check. I would say delayed gratification skills. Optimism has been proven that it will make you money there. But let's talk about some things even outside of EQ. Work is never old fashioned. And, it seems, and I think what we have to be careful, and this is where I'd say reality testing comes into play. In our day and age, often we see the glory of successful people, but we never know the story. And the story is generally years and hours of hard work there. And so I still see some of my top producers that they have really put in the work. And I really coach a lot of young sellers on this, because they're being given this message, and I don't know where they're getting it. Like, I need work-life balance. And I'm going to be really blunt here. You're 20 or 30. You haven't even worked long enough to worry about this. So work right now, because the research shows you can be your most creative. You've got the most energy in your 20s and 30s. And then when you have built up your territory, your customers, your expertise, you can let your foot off the gas a little bit. But that's reality testing. There are times and seasons in your life you are going to be wildly out of balance. Quit stressing about it.
Yes.
You're going to get back in balance. I
Yes.
have a very
Yes.
balanced, life. Now, my schedule's a little crazy this fall, and that's on me. But for the most part, I'm picking and choosing who I want to work with. That didn't happen 20 years ago. Okay. Yeah.
I'm getting to that place too. And
Yeah.
I'm grateful. I'm grateful for that. But I get asked by a lot of women entrepreneurs, especially those that have really small kids, because they want to know, should I get a nanny? Should I get help with my children now? So that they're thinking, if I get help now, maybe I can actually help with pickup later. Maybe I'll be available because my business could be at a point where I could let my foot off the gas a little, or they're feeling bad, like they want to be available. And so they're thinking, maybe I'll wait and defer and make myself available to my family most of the time now, and then I'll grow that later. And my advice typically, of course, people are all different, but my advice typically is get those skills and figure out what you're really good at as early as you can. I don't think a person only has, a limited number of gifts. I don't think you have a fixed calling that's going to be the same your whole life. I think you have chapters of your life,
Right.
But everybody needs skills. So one thing I've kept communicated to, these young women is I said, look, I put in 8 years in corporate, on the plane, traveling, making presentations, attending sales methodology training, learning enterprise complex sales as an account manager. And I did that, and I did the reps and made the mistakes. And you know what? Now I have stories for my book because I wrote the proposal that should not have been sent and got outsold in different situations. Like, I learned the hard way. Through that process, though, I learned that I was pretty good at cold calling, and that the lead generation piece on the front side was something that I actually enjoyed, and in fact, enjoy it more than this, what I would call the second half of the sales process. It's still true to this day. I like the qualifying and early relationship building. That's fun for me. Well, that led to my first business, right? Because I realized, oh my gosh, people will pay you to do this for them because they hate cold calling. Everybody has things like that. If you learn this is your niche in accounting, right? Or you learn this kind of law, or whatever it is, right? If you learn these things, you'll have freedom later. And that is about practice.
It is. And practice is about being clear. I think it's being clear on your goal, and it's also putting in the work to earn the reward. That's delayed gratification. And that's an EQ skill. It's kind of under the same umbrella as in the EQI 2.0, the impulse control. I am someone that has practiced a lot. I have, when I got started in this business, I was really struggling the first year. And here I'd been a VP of sales, a fast growing company, I had all the, you got the resume. And a really good mentor of mine gave me great advice. He saw that I was getting a little stressed. He said, Colleen, we're going to change your goals. And here's your goal. I want you to get to 100 no's as fast as you can. Now, of course, I thought, well, I can certainly hit that goal because I am well on my way. And then the second piece of advice was, he said, because by the time you reach 100 no's, you'll heard every story, excuse, stall. And then he said, when you come back from a sales call, get coaching. So if it doesn't go well, get coaching. So that's what I did. I may not have gotten the quote business, but I got the lesson. And I would get on the phone with the mentor and say, well, the person said this, what should I have said? Then I would know what to say. And then I go out and do it again. So yeah, like I said, there's no shortcut to success there. Everybody's life is theirs. So, I'm saying 20s and 30s, but you know what? If you want to take a break, there is going to be plenty of time to be successful. So look at your life. And at the end of it, are you going to be looking back and saying, I'm really happy with the choices I made?
Yes. And I think one thing that we share is a love for selling. I mean, there will always be a need for great sellers. And
Absolutely.
I do think that it's really cool. Some people find it very scary, but I think I call it this, it's like a challenge to look and say, in marketing automation, when so much can be automated, and oh my gosh, the AI tools that can write for you now, you pick the voice you want it to be in and you give it some templates and say, this is what I want it to sound like me. The stuff it can produce as a machine instead of a person, it's amazing. I mean, we'll
Right.
just keep seeing advances like this. I think though that there'll be opportunities and places for people who want to love other people and serve other people through sales. And what we sell will be different and what it will look like will be different. But I believe it'll require emotional intelligence. It'll require something. There'll be things that humans can do for decades to come that machines will not be able to replicate perfectly. And so I agree with you. I think if you could sit out for a season, have it look differently, but one of my personal missions is to reform the way people think about selling so that they see it as a dignified, honorable, wonderful way to get to that aspirational identity you have for yourself. Why is it that you're working? What is it that you want?
Mm-hmm.
I'm in a stage of life where I have adult children who are starting to pair off, and before long they'll start having their families, and I have a pretty clear vision of what I want my grandma life to look like. I mean, I
Yeah.
really do, and the means that it will take to do the things that I want to be able to do for them. And that is a driver that really makes me trickle all the way down to the daily revenue generating activities. Did I make my calls? Did I do my follow-up? Did it make it to my calendar? Did I do, win-loss review for myself? How is the health of my pipeline? I can really make that connection and see that because I've practiced, seeing how those reps tie to that bigger vision.
Absolutely. And, and that's what's interesting, where I think why emotional intelligence was so intriguing to me. I saw so many hardworking sales managers and salespeople, and because they didn't have the knowledge of the soft skills, again, that repetition of, coaching someone the wrong way, or not individualizing the coaching, or making the selling mistakes, but not realizing that it was a soft skill holding them back. And so, I saw a lot of salespeople and managers making boatloads of money and terribly unhappy. And, in life, we should be and this is a fun profession. I mean, my clients, I take it very seriously. My clients are my friends. But I have fun, and I am not going to be in this business not having fun. However, when you've got the complete set of skills, so the soft skills and the hard skills, that's when sales becomes fun. That's when it becomes enjoyable. That's when it becomes easy. And so, that's my mission at this point is, really creating these communities out there where, people like each other, they play well, they have fun together, they're making good money. And you know what? If you're worried about making a lot of money, then donate it. There's a lot of nonprofits that can use your dollars. So, so get over that. Yeah. And so my mission at this point is, yes, I know you're going to make the dollars if you learn EQ and IQ. But I also know you're going to have a more enjoyable, fulfilled life. You're going to be a happier person. You're going to be a person that people want to be around. And
Yes.
at the end of the day, I think that's what counts.
My friend, Drew Bird, that administered my EQI assessment, he likes to say this quote where he says, "There's no one in your life who wouldn't be happy with you improving your emotional intelligence." Everyone in your whole life would be happy for you to do this. I love that quote. Like personal, professional, it's where it all kind of bleeds out to other things, right?
Oh, it absolutely does. I mean, when you really study even the concept of emotion management, which comes into under all of this, is, you just, when you develop your emotional intelligence, you don't get that triggered. You don't wake up looking to be offended. If somebody does offend you, you think of the saying, well, treat others the way they should be treated, not the way they deserve to be treated. And you're not having these highs and lows. And I see a lot of people, they're just like a roller coaster. And, at the end of the day, mentally, they're depleted. And the other thing, and I'm starting to talk more about this, physically, they're not very healthy. And so, they're sitting there, as you mentioned earlier, they got cortisol pumping through. Stress inflames your body. It fatigues you. You're not sleeping well. And so pretty soon that catches up with you. This has got some physical implications to it as well if you don't learn how to raise the EQ quotient in your life.
Oh my gosh. I want everyone to know you have a book for sales managers that you had come out in 2020, in addition to the one I referenced earlier. So please mention that and then tell people where to find you.
Yeah, so thank you for that. The book title is Emotional Intelligence for Sales Leadership. So this is written for sales managers. The first part of the book is really on how to hire emotionally intelligent salespeople, so how to incorporate that into your hiring and interviewing process. And then the next section of the book is how to really apply EQ skills in your coaching approaches with your team. And then the final part of the book is really having them understand how people learn, the neuroscience behind learning, repetition, why focus is so important, get rid of the multitasking, be present. And so, yeah, and we've gotten really nice reviews on it. So I encourage everyone to pick it up. Amazon's probably the easiest place to go. If your listeners pick up the book, have them email me and I'll send them the book study guide. So we've got a book study guide for both.
Oh, that'll be great. So we'll put your email in the call notes so people have access to that. Thank you for that. And I want to mention again to the group, the Emotional Intelligence for Sales Success, your first book, is for everyone. And a lot of my listeners, Colleen, are owner sellers. They're small businesses, entrepreneurs. They sell complex B2B things, but they are getting better at it for their own business, for themselves. They all need to read that. This is for them. And then I have not read the second one, but I'm thinking of several clients who will benefit from it. So I will get it, read it so that I can recommend it. And I'll be sending it out to some of the clients who pay me for sales training, because they have people under their care that they need to get better at coaching, and they want to, they don't know how. And also there are not many people that are teaching people to be good sales managers. People just get promoted into this role, and there's not a lot of good training of how to do it. So I know of a handful of people in the whole world that I think are really leaders in teaching people how to do this. And so I'm really honored to have one of them here.
Oh, thank you.
Is there anything else that you want to share before we sign off?
If they go to our website, salesleadershipdevelopment.com, we've got a couple of free quizzes and free assessments they can take. And so I'd encourage them to pick those up, and that can maybe get them started on the journey. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So great. So follow Colleen and let us know. We'll share her email address and we can figure out how to help people go from there, because there's no one in our lives, as my friend Drew would say, no one in our lives who won't be happy if we improve our emotional intelligence. And it'll probably make us more money as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. More money easily and happier. Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you.
I'm so glad you joined us today. If you would like me to come and speak with your organization about how to sell like a good human, please contact me through the website howgoodhumanssell.com. Thanks, and talk with you again.